Hi, Dustin. This is Corky Laing calling from New York State. How you doing?
I am excellent. How you doing today?
You're doing great. Where are you now? Are you in Texas?
No, we are in Minnesota. We're a ways off from Texas.
Okay, you are. I just saw the MN. I'm sorry, I'm reading it here. I see Austin. And how you doing today, Dustin? Everything good?
Yeah, everything's great, and grateful to be speaking with you as well. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for your support, and this is mutually humbled by being able to chat about this book. And you did receive the book, did you not?
Yep, I had a chance to check it out, and I wanted to ask you about it. Letters to Sara. Can you tell the listeners a bit about it?
Yeah. Okay. Let's proceed. I'm ready. Ask on.
Well, I know it's a memoir, like a lot of musicians have written over the years, but this has got a different approach using letters. I've never seen another person take this kind of approach with a book before.
Well, I'm taking that as a compliment because I know a lot of my brothers and sisters in the music field have written their version of memoirs and what happens on the road. Quickly, I could tell you, and I think Tujas Chakala, my co-writer, had written in the foreword, it came about because over the years, Tuya had been talking, and I talking about writing a memoir, etc., but we wanted to make it a little bit more, a little bit more original, if I may say that. Instead of having stories about snorting ants off the sidewalk with Ozzy or something like that, we wanted to keep it less decadent and give it a bit more credibility. Coincidentally, Dustin, over the years back, Tuya found a box that was filled with letters to my mother that I had written over 30 years while I was on the road with my local bands and then with Mountain and West Bruce and Lang. I didn't know my mother had saved these letters. And she put them in a box, and I never knew about it. And when she passed away, she sent it to my sister and my brother. I finally got the box, but I never opened it. And then Tuja saw the box while we were rehearsing another project, and she said, wow, this could give the content a little bit more substance in terms of the letters were a catalyst to helping do a timeline over the years, over 30 years, because they were all dated. And then what would happen is the stories were sometimes about the letters, and they were embellished with other stories at the time, in that time zone. So, again, I'm glad you recognized that because that was the idea. The agenda was to take it to another level of substance in terms of it's not necessarily a rock book. It's really, the book is about me staying as a result of my mother keeping the letters and me not knowing about it, but staying in touch with my family. Because, Dustin, when you're on the road, especially when you're 14, 15 years old, on the weekends playing some tertiary markets around Quebec and Ontario, Canada, you get lonely out there. So I would write these letters in an effort to stay tethered to my family. I needed to keep in touch with reality because it gets very, very spacey out there. And, here I am playing and making a few bucks when I was 15, 16 years old. And, again, I come from a very big family. I have triplet brothers. I had a sister, my mother, my father, my aunt, my uncle, and a very small house. And since I was the baby in the family, I did everything I could to stay in touch with the family so they didn't forget about their little brother. And that was one of the reasons for writing these letters and staying in touch. What was propitious was the idea that my mother saved them. And as it turns out, Tuja's idea of, well, let's use the letters and let's embellish the letters with other stories. So I guess in capsule form, Dustin, that's what we did. And I'm happy to say that the few responses we've had in a very short time, because the book has just been released literally in the last week or two on Amazon, and the response has been amazing. Because I said to Tuja, can we put some of these stories, all these crazy stories that we did backstage, on stage, under the stage? And she's a class act. She's a professor. She's a PhD in Finland, and and she teaches over there. And she put what I would consider to be a proper first division look at the ratings, and I'm thrilled that I had the opportunity to work with her. And frankly, I'm humbled by the fact that you recognize the fact that it's not a typical, if I may say so, rock memoir. Okay, that could work for me or against me. I'm not sure.
No, I think it's great how it all came out. Again, Letters to Sara available now, and even if it hadn't become the book, that's got to be great for you just to have those letters back and those memories with your family.
Yeah, it was. It was very good. As a matter of fact, it brought a few tears because I didn't remember a lot of it. And we're talking 50 years ago. Actually over 50 years ago, when, your state of mind as a teenager and everything it was scary, Dustin. And when I think back of, you're out in the woods there and somewhere in Quebec, and, in those days it was precarious. You didn't know what was going to happen. You didn't even know what kind of audience you draw. And keep in mind, in those days, there was the French audience. You had the bilingual situation in Quebec. But yes, it did. It was heartwarming, in some case, kind of mystifying to remember these things. And and Tuja helped me write them, form a proper flow of the stories without it being, I was born here, my favorite color was red, yeah, I give her total credit for that, and frankly, I'm delighted that you noticed it. That it did that. It did that. It brought, it's my memories, and that's the most valuable thing you have in life. After all is said and done, it's all about your memory. And I used to have a band called the Memory Thieves, which I thought was a great name, but it didn't last long because we forgot the name. Anyways, kidding aside, that was a kachis, by the way, Dustin, right there. Okay. So seriously speaking, 5 years of writing back and forth, going to Finland, and Tuja's my manager, so we're on the road for a couple of years, and we'd constantly look at the book, look at the ideas, go back and forth, and then we ultimately did an audio book too, which really got me because I had to literally, talk and voice over the stories, and it was quite an experience, Dustin. It was a quite unique experience, getting off the drum set and putting a pen in my hand instead of drumsticks. Very, very different technique.
Well, and of course, besides the book, you're still obviously playing as well. I read you got a new album coming out here, the Toledo Sessions. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can. I could talk a lot. I think we're limited to 20 minutes. I've had a few coffees there, Dustin, so please forgive me if I go on. Yes, the Toledo Sessions. We were over the last year. I didn't have any pressure to do anything, and I ran into a couple of great musicians in Toledo, and I played with one of them, the guitar player Chris Shutters, who I played with on the road back in 2017. We did this heavy metal tour of like 25 shows in 30 days all around America. We did it the old-fashioned way, in the van, jump in the van, drive 200, 300 miles, play the gig, jump in. It was definitely a challenge. So we did that, but as a result, we came up with this material with this other artist and performer named Mark Michael, who at the time was writing for Alan Parsons, because Alan Parsons was... So basically, there was a lot of music going on in the Toledo area. And I think the fact of not having any pressure to put out an album, et cetera, freed me up and freed the musicians up. We didn't have any agenda. It was music. It was the freedom to play what we wanted. And I'm very, very proud, and I'm not hyping you on this, Dustin, very proud of this record. I've been very lucky over the years to participate in a lot of collaborations with some great musicians, had some success with it, but the important part is the music and the bar that you hope to set as you move along over 50 years in the business. You want to get better, and you want to have better quality, and you want to have more cleverness in the songs. And I have to tell you, it's ambitious to try to keep it going, but I felt in this case, Dustin, that I achieved a good deal of that with these two musicians. Again, I give them total credit. Well, 2/3 credit. But the point is, the record should be out in the summer. It's called the Toledo Sessions, and it'll be on Rouge Records. And again, they'll be promotionally put in order probably in the next month or two, because right now Tuj and I are working on getting the book and the vibe of the book out there. And I may say so that thank you for your support on this, Dustin. I appreciate it, because the book right now is the priority, and the music will follow. How's that? It sounds almost poetic. The music will follow, Dustin.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great that you're able to keep all these passions of yours going. And I wanted to ask you, you mentioned striving to get better. How is it for you, on the road and, still playing after all these years? I mean, obviously, you got to be on the top of your game as a drummer to still play that kind of music.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I did know this a while back. I have to play every day. It's beyond music thing sometimes. It's just the physicality and the ambidextrous aspect of playing. And, at a certain point in your career, in your music, you have to employ style. And I never really concentrated on style until the last few years. In other words, style will help you get through what I consider the more challenging aspects of actually hitting a drum a certain way. And, there's all kinds of other things I can get into on this chat. But basically, you're exactly right. You got to stay on the program. At this stage, it's not just maintenance, staying physically in shape. At this point, you want to keep your eyes and your ears open for something new that you've never done before. And it's in itself is very challenging, to find the reason and to find something that moves you even that much more. And that's why the book is really good. To me, it subsidizes that getting out there aspect. You have to get on the road. You have to see and feel it. You really can't get that vibe on a computer. You're not going to learn that much on a computer. And I do, by the way, check into all the drum lessons and the schools of drumming on the computer. I do that, but really, you've got to take your body, and you've got to take your arms and your legs, and you've got to move as a drummer. Now, if you're a violin player or a flute player, it's not necessary, maybe. But as a drummer, your body has to do what your mind tells it. It's almost like sex. I would like to compare that, but I don't know where this program is going, so I will not do that. I'm saying to you, it's very important to maintain and to keep physically in shape and to keep your mind in shape and hopefully your heart, because that's where the inventory, that's where it's stored. You keep remembering what you've done and trying to move that ahead along with what you can bring from other aspects in your life. And if you live long enough, you can be really great with that philosophy. How's that? That sounded pretty good, Dustin.
You're almost ready for another book here, I think.
That's funny. Not right now, Dustin. We're just, it was a lot of work. I don't know if you're at all, but it's, people think, well, you just take a pen and paper and it is very challenging. And I think the first people that will tell you that will be writers themselves. You see a blank page and you put words on it. I'm lucky because I can sit down and put out a feel, a drum beat, and take it from there. So there's always a beginning. And as you know, the drums started this whole thing decades and, years ago, centuries ago. The drums started it all. That's what heartbeat was. And so as long as you have a starting point like that, I believe you're on your way. And I can't thank myself. I can't thank my luck of choosing drums in terms of how to navigate my entire life. It's really a blessing, and I'll say it again. It's really luck. I'd like to think I had something to do with it, but I just took it and ran. And like you said, you got to stay with it. You have got to stay, especially drums. And of course, singers have to keep their vocal cords in shape. But any drummers out there know that. They don't have to hear me saying anything. They know they have to sit down and put their 1,000 hours in every time they sit down. And That's why they call it a drum throne, Dustin, because you feel like you're king of the world when you sit on that drum set, you know. And are you there, Dustin? God, my phone is going. My phone. No, I'm sorry to say, my phone. I'm in Brooklyn, and the Wi-Fi thing is in and out. So when there's quietness like that and there's silence, I'm going, oh, I just lost Dustin. He's out in Minnesota. But anyways, carry on, Dustin. I'm listening.
Well, yeah, you were talking about drumming, and I've read so many drummers over the years talk about how they were influenced by you, and a lot of them talk about the decision to open with the Cowbell on Mississippi Queen. Did you think you'd be influencing other drummers that followed you just by making that decision?
Absolutely not. I had no idea what I was doing. I'll tell you what happened specifically. Leslie and I came together. I had these lyrics from Mississippi Queen that came together when I was playing in Nantucket, and at this bar in the summertime. This is when I had my local band, and at the time we were playing Cripple Creek, and it was this real funky club, beach club, right out there on the dunes, etc. And everybody was dancing. It was a good party atmosphere. And then all the electricity on the island went off, like just dark, except for one of the emergency lights, which was shining on the dance floor, coincidentally shining on this girl who was wearing a see-through knitted dress. And she was dancing with a good friend of mine, Roy Bailey, who had asked her to come up from Mississippi to hang with him for the summer. So there they were dancing, and then all of a sudden these lights, when electricity went off, and the only thing that's not plugged in are the drum set. So I continue to play up on Cripple Creek, and they're dancing, and of course a lot of people left the dance floor at that point because they thought it was over. But she kept on dancing because I was playing the cowbell. I kept playing because when you play a cowbell, it implies sort of that Latin sexy thing that goes on in music. So I was screaming at her because I knew she was from Mississippi. And there was no microphone, so screaming, Mississippi. I was trying to pick her up, Dustin. That's what I was trying. And, of course, my buddy Roy's looking at me going, what, is Corky crazy here? She's coming on to my... Anyways, long story short, after screaming at her, and I sort of was going, you know what I mean? I took that idea because of the fact that she was still dancing, and the local band goes back to New York, and we're sitting around in the loft waiting for our next gig. And I say to the guys, can you help me write this lyric? I think I got a good lyric for a song. And they said, no, you go ahead. Well, at the time, Dustin, we didn't have a record deal. We had nothing. But I did believe in a good lyric, especially with the drumming, typical of the backbeat for Cripple Creek, that it was worth it. So I wrote a lyric, and I kept it until Leslie and I got together, and we were going to do some recording for Mountain. And Leslie says, do you have any lyrics? And I said, yeah, and I put it out. Leslie, within a New York minute, sets down this great lick, and all of a sudden, within seconds, it was a song that wrote itself because the lyrics was there, and Leslie's rocking, and he's screaming out, and I'm saying, wow, let's take this to the studio and show Felix, which we did. You get into the studio, Dustin, and there's the bass and the guitars with huge amplifiers, right? They had stacks. All these things, and here I am coming in with, my drum set, so I have to really beat the shit out of the drums to even get in there and match it. And at the time, you couldn't just like count in a song 1, 2, 3. We're talking volume. I think at the time, Dustin, we were probably the loudest rock band, around. And so what I did was I smashed the cowbell, kick, which would count in the song. Kick, so that was the count. So we mixed the song, and we're sitting around, and we're talking, and I said, well, Felix, I guess it's time to edit out the cowbell. And Felix looks at me and goes, I don't know, man, that's pretty catchy. How much catchier can you get than a loud clunk on a cowbell, 4 beats? So that's the way it came about, but nobody knew that, as a result, that I would luck out and become like this cowbell drummer, and hey, I loved it, it was good, it's nice to get known for something, but the cowbell was good, and, but to answer your question, which I hope I did, had no idea what effect that would have. I have to tell you, though, across from the studio, and I think it's in the book, across from the studio, the band of Gypsies with Jimi Hendrix at the record plant, they were doing their recording. So Felix says, Corky, you hung with Jimmy. Do you want to go over and we'll finish mixing? I want to be nice to see what he thinks, because nobody had been in the studio except the band. So I go across the hall, knock on the door, and I say, Mr. Hendricks, Felix and the band would love to if you can give us a moment of your time. He comes and he walks across the hall. We go in the studio. Everybody at this point is like really tight. There's Jimi Hendrix. Sit him down between the speakers, and we put on Into Mississippi Queen. His head is down. We're all looking. We're waiting. At the end of the song, it must have been at least 25 seconds of nothing. He lifts his head up. Mr. Hendricks, James Marshall Hendricks, lifts his head up, and he goes, cool. That's what he said. So we knew we had something good, because if Hendrix says cool, that goes a long way. But that was the only indication that we felt that something great was or good was happening. And that's the story, Dustin, on that.
That's awesome. And I appreciate your time, Corky. I know we've kept you a long time. Again, Letters to Sara, the book is out, and the audio book, the Toledo Sessions coming out. Is there anything else maybe we should be looking out for?
Well, probably, but I'm going to tell you, Dustin, I just appreciate your support and your backing on this. Yes, the book is out, and it's on Amazon, and I don't know how to become a promo slut, but I'll do the best I can. Yes, there is a record called Toledo Sessions, which will be coming out in the summer. I could say that. As far as anything else is concerned, anybody that is going to Europe or Germany in October will be over there for a month in Europe touring. In the meantime, this summer, during August, we'll be performing with the Legends of Woodstock, Dustin. We're going to different cities with some of the musicians that did play at Woodstock and playing these various mini festivals in these other areas. Okay. So you're all invited, Dustin. I'm not sure if we're going to Minnesota, but we'll be out there. I mean, this particular tour will be going, I think, all over America for August, wherever they can go. And I think that's a wrap, Dustin. And I thank you and all your audience. Thank you so much for your patience and your time. And I do hope they get out to get the book. That would be wonderful.
Awesome. Again, it's been an honor speaking with you today, Corky. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. We'll talk again at some point on the road that goes ever on. All right, Dustin, thank you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.